Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. I am Tony Lynch. I am your host. And of course, we are bringing an amazing guest to you guys today. You guys are really going to have a lot of fun. She has an amazing story, but she does a lot of amazing work as well. So before I bring her up here, I would like to say that if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And as always, this is for educational purposes only. Good morning, Lincoln. Thank you for tuning in, my brother. And now I'm going to bring over my next guest. You guys help me welcome Cheanise. Hi.
Hi, Tony. How's it going, everybody?
Pretty good, pretty good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it has been a roller coaster of a maybe lifetime, decade, or century. And
Yeah.
to have the abilities to be connected on social media and having the absolute blessing to know that I got to meet you and we had our visit just really makes me so excited for what 2025 has in store and to connect with all of you lovely views and followers and listeners today.
Wow. That's truly amazing. Now, before we get started, tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Yeah. So I am up here in the cold Canadian climate right now. I'm from Alberta, Canada, and I grew up as a what we call a redneck farmer's daughter, and had a journey of not only just knowing grief on a physical loss or losing somebody. It was more about losing identity too, about our heritage, what we were going and struggling through in our own industry and governments. So it was crazy just to realize that I no longer was going to be this quote unquote farmer, and knowing that I had something destined bigger. And if you would have asked me 15 years ago that this is what I'd be doing, I'd say you're absolutely batshit crazy. So as walking into it now, I've changed titles throughout this kind of decade, saying, I'm a healer, or I'm a medium, or I'm a connector, or I'm a speaker, or a channeler, to now really kind of coming home to I am a life tour guide. And what I really want to bring forward to people in that awareness is just saying, like, this is about your story, your path, and your destiny. And I just have some maybe crazy stories or heartfelt moments or tools in my toolbox that might be needed for your journey thus far. And if you feel connected and guided to that, then I would love to share that with you, because I think what we've been seeing in the healing or wellness or mental health or grievance industry is just so much about, I'm going to fix you, I'm going to change you, I've got big promises for you.
Yeah.
When if any of us know what grief feels like and looks like, that shit ain't fucking leaving real quick. It's
No.
something that could be momentarily, can be this. So that is where we then I am a person who loves to share my stories and different tools and modalities, but then my husband and I also have been gifted the opportunity of being stewards of a facility that him and I don't like saying that we bought it, but we purchased it, but we steward it. And this is in the heart of the mountains. It's a remote location, it's off grid, and it is somewhere where you can come to disconnect to reconnect. So that's our big philosophy. We bring in a 360-degree healing and awareness. So we do work with cultural teachings of all nations, and that's why you see us called the Niche Nation. It's about understanding how all different heritage and people and creations and stories and medicines were all crafted together in a beautiful teaching of what we call the medicine wheel. And that holds of all of us as nations. Doesn't matter what color, skin, layers, or slang you have in your voice. It's literally that we are here to do work all together, because that circle is what's strong.
See, and I think we need to get back to that. And I'm going to say first and foremost, thank you for the work that you do. Truly amazing. Like I said, we had the chance to talk before. We definitely going to be in contact with each other. A lot of great stuff that we can do, right? And you touched on something. Now, before I get into your story and you break it down how you actually got into this work, I want to say, when you touched on this, I had this aha moment, like, man, you hit it right on the head. Everybody says, oh, we're going to fix you. We want you to move through this. We want to, they always trying to rush things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you and I both know when it comes down to grief, trauma, mental health, and things like that, you hit the nail on the head again. There's no pushing through it. There is none of that. You have to take your time. You have to be able to address the things that come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no one size fit all. There really isn't. Everybody has their own way that they're going to deal with it. We as practitioners, it is our job to be able to pivot with them. And every time something changes or they heal a certain part, we have to be able to pivot within that area with them, right? It's just say, for instance, when a person is dealing with childhood trauma, there's a difference when a person is having an episode, right, in the present to where their mind is in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to go, okay, I see this individual. Let me see where they are mentally, right? So we can go back there to begin the process of healing that in that part of them, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's not healed, it just keeps coming up. Look, I'm saying, I say this from experience. If you don't heal that child would always be angry. It will
Yeah.
always come up in your adulthood, right? You know, and every part of you, every
Mm-hmm.
part, it requires a different approach. It re-
Yeah. And Tony, I think today's just hitting it on the head kind of moment for everything, is because you're gonna see a lot of us, and I've failed at it, or I've pushed too hard, because when you want to see somebody finally break through from those chains or those burdens or those layers, we're all guilty because we're human. We want you to succeed. We want you to know what love is and what freedom and what that sunshine on your face feels like. And
Mhm.
that's where you have to come to where that person's story, their journey, their existence. And that's why I said, I'm a life tour guide. If you come into my space, that means you're at this layer that you want to navigate through something that I have my availability and my tools for. And like you
Mhm.
said, this is where some people just will never let go of it. Some people will just stay in those programs if we don't heal that child.
Right.
Hmm.
I have a question because I want to go back a little bit on your journey. How did you become who you are today, right? Because you touched on this line. We talked a little bit about it. I told you we're about to go on the journey. Take us on your journey, right?
Right.
Who was you and how did your life's path lead you in this place that you are today?
Hmm. So, for whoever's kind of new to connecting with me, my belief system is that your soul is here to learn and experience. I believe Earth is a playground, a place that we literally get to experience who we are, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it could be, what it should be. So that's why we have such miraculous stories on
Mm,
every human being's kind of, um bumper stickers, I kind of say. But the my story started that I was coming to a family, because where I'm literally sitting right now is where my mom and dad had their honeymoon, and they put an intention, and they call, I believe, as us as parents, we call our children down from the stars, and our children choose us as parents because we have tools or experiences or some sort of resume that really resonates with that child, and that child wants to learn that. And so I believe that my parents were exactly what I needed. And when I came to this world, I did die. They did have to resuscitate me back, and I was a complicated emergency C-section. I was my mom's first born, and that was hard because I remember saying, this wasn't the family I chose. This isn't what, like, now me seeing what this family's gonna be, I don't want a part of this. And my family was all saying that I was a boy. They knew it was a boy. It felt like a boy. It was going to be a boy. And it was the first grandchild of that side of the family, and all these big things. And it was being like, there was so much pressure before I was even born in existence, that there was like this like big platform to just kind of hold. So knowing that I wasn't what my parents wanted technically was hard for me to kind of like wrap around my head in that just first initiation or that first moment. And so when I was born and gifted as a Good Friday Easter baby, I then had the journey of knowing, like, on everybody as that firstborn, there were so many things that was being learned with me. And I can tell you, my dad loved me to the end of the earth. My mom loved me to the end of the earth. What they couldn't love was all of the hurt and the damage and grief that they had in their space, that kept taking away from our childhood and my siblings and our existence as they were going through the harder things. And so I was the showboat. I was the one in your face and dancing and singing. I was the one always helping you do things. So it was just like this very bubbly, excited, connected kind of personality that started to dwindle away after when our family in the we farmed elk and cattle and grain and hay. So the early 2000s and the later 90s was when CWD, BSE, this is all kind of like agricultural. So that was like what you heard was mad cow disease was in the elk or in the beef, and that took away all of our kind of triangulation of our family generational farming, that my grandparents were the cattle farmers and grain farmers, we were the elk farmers, and that all then led into devastation. So our animals weren't worth anything. We had no pastures, no feed for our animals throughout our whole entire provinces because a massive drought happened. And that's when at that time we would always go to conferences or conventions with our other like-minded cattle ranchers or elk producers, and we'd sit and we'd talk to government and say, like, how are you going to help us? Like, this is like a national freaking problem. Like, what's going to happen? And I was younger at that time, and all I remember is sitting there and watching adults just like lose color in their face after the government says, you're just going to have to diversify and figure it out. You're going to have to just do what you need to. And I just remember watching like mourning going across everybody's face. So that layer of grief started to just realize that these parents aren't going to be able to afford food or school or tours or their holidays they send their kids or Christmases. And then my mom's parents passed away from, my Guido was first, and that was from a brain tumor. And then my Baba was on next, and she passed away from lung cancer. And sitting there losing kind of our anchors, they were our foundation, our support system, because my dad kind of looked to them more as his own parents versus his parents, because my dad's grief story really set deeply into us kids, and he was constantly preaching and teaching us because he couldn't heal from all of the wounds in his stories. So now I have two parents that were non-functionable, and I felt like I had to kiss my childhood goodbye. So then I started becoming the rent-a-parent in my household, and it just started to create this know-it-all energy to my family that was like, well, Cheanise is telling us to do this, and that's what happens when Cheanise is involved, and Cheanise is just a bossy bitch, and Cheanise is just this, and Cheanise, you're not my mom, or Cheanise, you're not my dad, when it would come to siblings. And it was just this constant, like, losing game. And I just felt like, I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to heal. I'm just trying to be something that everybody needs. And it just kept kind of like eating away at my soul. And it just felt like I was losing who I was. I wasn't happy go lucky anymore. I wasn't these layers of kindness, because then as our childhood kept continuing, the abuse was starting to enhance. So physical abuse, mental abuse, and just really shutting down everything of our emotional and physical being. We then had to go through child social services 3 times, because we then talked to our student counselors at that time. And my sister was the first one that said, what was going on at home. So then they came to me as the older sibling, being like, is this true? And I'm like, yeah, but it's just not a big deal. Like, we're just dealing with it at home. So just like trying to slough it off. And then that really started to put a ripple into it, getting so bad that my dad, when we were going for our last court hearing, would scream, foaming at his mouth, at us all the way to our local courthouse, saying that you better tell them the fucking truth of that you guys are brats, and if we're gonna do this, you're never gonna go anywheres in life, and you're gonna go to the foster home, and you're gonna do this. And it was just all this fear mongering. And then that's where it just started creating numbness in our whole existence, knowing that there was nowheres out of this, and that was the end. And that just started to take away so much that we didn't know how to deal with, because the whole community either taught my parents, knew my parents, worked with my grandparents that were still alive on my dad's side. So at that sense, you're trying to put on this happy-go-lucky, good child energy, but then everybody around you just keeps seeing that this is what they're truly doing in the background, and nobody's doing anything.
Wow. So now it makes sense, like the loss of identity, because you've had become like a mother figure to your siblings, right? A disciplinary figure to those that were around you, navigate the world of grief. I mean, and you're absolutely right. The oldest one is the one that everybody experiments on. We firstborns, man, they don't understand. I used to look at my sister and go, man, if only you knew.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you wonder why I'm messed up, look at them two right there. I'm the one that they messed up on. They get it right with you, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now if you let my sister tell it, she'll tell you her moms used to get in fights all the time, but my sister loved my mom,
Yeah.
and vice versa. But man, I was the one that got beat up all the time. I was like, look, I don't know what part of the game this is, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be punching on me like this, okay?
Yeah.
I'm gonna start punching back.
I'm tapping out. I'm tapping out.
Yeah, I'm tapping out. But they wouldn't let me tap. They wouldn't let me tap out. I was like, look, I got the white flag. I got the white flag. They was like, right in forehead. We're going for round 2.
Yeah,
I was like,
exactly.
this is not Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
This is not
exactly.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. No,
You
and
know?
it's just, and that's where it's just like, as you get older, everybody always says, you're gonna understand one day, you're gonna get what you understood, and mama gonna tell you all about it, because when you were gonna have kids, like, it's all that, like, those layered kind of programs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I don't get it. That's how you're gonna treat a human being. So then that's where, if any of you have worked on, grief therapy or programs, there's 15 stages of grief. And that's where, in the teachings of that grief, we're on a roller coaster. So it ain't linear, it ain't vertical, it ain't horizontal. It is just a motion that we are working with in grief. So then it got to the point of anger. That's when I started to become the rebellion, saying that I was still 14 years old and getting the belt. having to pull down our pants and get the belt, or having our grandparents also be screaming at us, because the biggest thing was my mom's parents were really like a more of an elderly parent when they had my mom, because it was from a separate household that they had another relationship. Afterwards, they were left their old one, their old partners, and so then my dad's side was out of wedlock and kind of an accident at a rodeo story. And so when that happened, my parents were kind of from two different parenting backgrounds and two different kind of wanting stories of their journey, because my mom was technically the only child from my Bob and Guido, but from other marriages they had other siblings, versus my dad was the oldest and the son that then was the forced marriage to having that family created. So there was just always kind of this like only child sibling energy that they just didn't they didn't have anything really to journey through truly on their own. And then when they found each other, it was just like, we're complete, we're whole. And my mom and dad loved each other. Like that was not a love story that should have had to break forward, but it did because of everything in its environment. So then that's when we were just in that stage of like, I told my mom to leave the fucking farm and go get away from here because she's useless, because I just needed her to get somewheres where it would be safe, so the rest of us could have somewheres where we could be safe. And that's where my siblings will say it to this day, I'm my dad's golden child, chosen child, moments and things. But if you had that layer of hearing, if he heard my name to this day, he just can't function, because I was trying to hold him accountable to the version of my dad I did know, where my siblings didn't get to know him because they were younger. I got to have those moments. I got to have that experience with him. They didn't of him. And so I was at that stage being like, this is bullshit. This is enough. This doesn't get to happen anymore. To the point then after that, my dad tried to kill me a month before my graduation. And that is where I just said,
Hold on. Huh?
yeah.
Your dad tried to kill you a month before your graduation. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that one caught me by surprise, right? Now, we hear stories like this. And the reason why it caught me by surprise, because, like, I've heard stories about parents killing their kids, actually going through with it. As a matter of fact, there was a story not too long ago, probably about less than a week ago, where the father went over to his son's house and killed him in cold blood.
Yeah.
But they had been feuding back and forth, right? Although his son was grown, kids, wife, everything, him and his dad just had a misunderstanding. And I guess dad said enough is enough. And he went to his house and killed him in front of his kids. And so now hearing this about you, I'm just like, wow.
Now, when I say that part, I'm expressing, because if any of you are parents out there listening to this, or just really feeling like, how could that happen? How can it? It's very simple. My dad was grieving, knowing that I'm getting older. I'm not gonna be the little girl and that person to him anymore. And that he doesn't get to have control over what he can make safe. Because the root of what my dad's harm and damage all was about was trying to love you, trying to protect you, because he wasn't protected. He wasn't saved as a child. So that grief he has held and continues to hold is because those layers are because he doesn't have somebody safe enough to hold him. And it all happened because my best friend got the call that his mom has stage 4 cancer and she doesn't have long to live. And he was a year older than me, so he already graduated and he used to work with us. So I went out there and I asked my dad, and my dad says I never did, but I asked my dad and I said, can I go help them? And so I spent the rest of the afternoon helping that family navigate, mediating. So I was doing all this shit before I thought I was even a part of this world. And I helped them and I took the guns away from the house because that was where they were scared if anybody wanted to be suicidal or they couldn't live their life or moving things like that. Then I was able to move them because that was where my dad introduced him into hunting, and there was all the extra guns and the things there. So I was thinking logically ahead that our guns registered to my dad are at somebody else's house, needing to bring them forward because he would come hunting with us. And I thought I was doing the right job. And then that's where my then dad went into a state where I came back and he was in such animalistic instinct reactions that I went against his wishes and his control and his manipulation, that he started to see he was losing control, that literally caused him to then overreact. And when I remember looking at my dad and I was crying with the family, and he looks at me and he says, were you doing drugs? I've never touched an ounce, a lick, or anything of drugs because of the way my dad has taught us. The way he would make fun of my mom, would do all of these layers of just like kind of propaganda, right? Like it was always that, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. It was always what he thought versus what he experienced or knew or had, quote unquote, sometimes science behind. And when I saw him, my dad wasn't there when this whole fight happened. It was that my dad was so scared, knowing that he wasn't going to be able to be this person anymore, and I was going out of bounds. So it's like it's kind of like a herd. And so you're trying to put your alphas, your omegas, your betas into place. And that's where he was trying to put me back into the place. But we were strong. We were adults. I was 18 years old at this time. And that's where it's just like these layers are past the point of even existing safely, because all this rage and hurt and damage is just so overwhelmed in the system. And he just started to beat the shit out of me. And if anybody knew my dad, he was a big man. And that's where it took everything of my soul, knowing that if I don't get out of that shop, nobody's going to find me. And I did anything it took to get out. And then when I got back into my house, screaming at the top of my lungs, and then my dad is like driving around with the quad and comes and hears that I'm at the house, says, kill her, fucking deal with her. And my mom didn't know what to do with it and started going through those layers of hitting my head against the dryer pipe, because she's being programmed to just deal with me, because if we don't listen to what my dad says, there's hell to pay. And so at that time, it was like, I'm gone. This is it. And the only thing that was different was my siblings drugged me back into our little bedroom, and my dad kept, and my sister covered over me and said, don't hit her again. And he hit her over the face. And that's how the final layer of child social services came for the third time, was that she came to school with a half black face, and that I could barely walk or get onto the school bus. And our school bus driver was our next door neighbor. They knew everything that was going on. And it was so hard for the community, now that we're older and we're all living and functioning. The community always still comes up to us and say, I don't know how you kids made it out alive. We didn't know what to do. But that layer of grief, of knowing that your parents don't want you on this planet anymore because you're causing them so much pain, is a layer to walk on, because of that fear, because of that existence. And that's where it's just like, I don't blame my dad all I'm looking for sometimes, that when we're in this healing journey, is you're looking for that closure or that apology. But that's where it's now, how do you really understand that you got to forgive them at some sort of point or layer, because it's going to eat you up alive.
We got a comment, and I was going to ask the same question. Thank you for this, Lincoln. Uh, how do you get past that though? Well, I'm not going to say how you get past that, because getting past something, meaning that it just has a different meaning. But how does one begin to grow with all of that trauma and begin to heal all of that to become the amazing person that you are today? Because that's a lot. I mean, when you think about parents, right? I know for most of us out here, you know, um, that grew up in a different generation, our parents used to whip us all the time, extension
Mm-hmm.
cords, rulers, shoes, whatever they could find, they beat us with it, right?
Yep.
But yours is a different sort of beating. That's not even border. That is abuse. Banging your head on a dryer pipe. And the list goes on and on and on. Right?
Mm-hmm. But
How
I
does
think that
one grow?
I think but it's the same kind of layer for all parents, because it's out of fear. Like, when I have sat down with the science and dissected it, so what I had to do to get past that was literally, now I'm an analytical scientific person. I didn't I didn't really go into the cults or the Kool-Aids or things like that, but my parents taught us about, life and death, and you feel that, the heebie-jeebies or the goosebumps, or you can kind of body test yourself knowing what you should do or shouldn't do, because that's how we work with animals. That's how we work with people
Mm,
or environments. Like, it's the way that the woo-woo world kind of got misdemeanored into what's just instinctually in a body. I'll get to that later. But that layer of understanding that, when it's a right or wrong expression. And so what I have found out through this is that why these pains and these experiences happen is because they are so scared that they are trying to do anything to get you back into whatever program, cycle, pattern, or experiences is, because that's all they have for their tools to know that they can love you and protect you. Because they know what other hurt and damages they've experienced. It's like when you're working with veterans, they get so scared and so damaged, because then they are now hypersensitive around every corner, every car, every situation that just doesn't feel right. They're hyperextended. So your cortisol levels, your functionality of your body, your adrenals, your synapses, your brain thought patterns, all are fried or existing into this fear, panic, fight and flight modes.
right.
So that's
Right.
why you're going to have parents where I hear it all the time. My mom didn't do fuck all for me. She just sat in that corner and she didn't do anything. People, she was programmed. That is how her body was going to be in constant freeze. And that's where she might die, with that exact same freeze pattern. That father, that mother might be in this exact same fight pattern, and might be the alcoholic, and might be the rager, or the one you can't trust with your kids around, because that's where they only know. It's a short fuse. It's a fried cord that you're going to get electrocuted from, because that's where that cut and that cord and that healing has not helped out yet.
Mm,
So it's not that I'm blaming my parents, because I have a great relationship with my mom now. I don't have a relationship as of this year, and I am 30, gonna be 32 here soon, that I had to wait from 18 to 32 years old, that I said no more to my dad and
right.
that grandparent side, because I was trying. I was taking all those years to figure out and navigate, was I at fault? Did I do something wrong? Because then you get into that self-doubt and that self-sabotage, that I should have been better, and what if I didn't talk back, and what if I would have been a better person, and what if we got more healing, and I brought out mediations and did this work, and I thought I was going to finally fix my family. and we were going to all kumbaya and have Christmases at this place now because we did it. We came back. We got back to where we should have been. But it didn't happen because you can't keep asking all your players who are strictly going to be defenses all of a sudden to be forwards. You're going to have to understand that person is in a position and they are carrying an ancestral burden, a story that they have to deal with. And if they can't deal with it, it dies with them or somebody else carries on the baton. So when you hear family curses or hexes, or is the evil wicked witch or the warlock or the problem child or the black sheep of the family, those are where you are going to find out who's going to be cutting those cords of karmic debt, because somebody has to pay for it. It's like a shark loan.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to get at it. Somebody's got to pay for what that has been done. So you have to choose. If that's happening in your existence in your family, you might not have any other choice than that's done. You need to anchor that and drop that pile of shit right where it lays and move on. Let that go. That's what we say let go is. Not being letting go of like, oh, the beatings hurt and all those things. You have to understand that that was out of some sort of fear and tactic and programming that, yes, that hurt your soul, but is that going to continue to create dis-ease, disharmony, dysregulation, dysfunction in all of our spaces? Because it's going to be a disc. That's the cord cut in your electrical cord. You're going to get electrocuted to that shit one day.
Yeah. See, and I love the fact that you brought it up. I'm gonna read this comment real quick and get your thoughts on it. Lincoln said his dad abandoned him at but now he's referring to what you said. He goes, that is intense. Like, how do you start to forgive him? They're supposed to be your comfort, your protectors. And I would have to say, I totally agree. Now, for those who have gone through or currently going through the abuse from their parents and things like that, they may not understand it, because I've talked to a lot of people, women and men, and men alike, where they're going, oh, it's just what it is, right? It becomes a normal thing for them. And you talked about the mom, right? Because the mom, and I go, do you understand what it took, what that mom had to go through before you came along?
Yeah, 100%.
And you're right, it's a programming. But I want to get back to the statement. How do you begin to even forgive someone for that sort of brutality? I mean, call it for what I mean. In my eyes, that's brutal. That's very brutal, right? And any parent that can do that to their own child, it ain't no telling what they can do to anybody else out there, right?
Well, Tony, that's where it's just like, this is the paradox that we lived in. That literally we would go through that. And I have this one story that my dad and my brother and I, we were going into our main city. It was called Edmonton. And my dad, I forget what was the big fight or kerfuffle, and everybody's pissed off. And so we're going to a restaurant to go and eat. And we're all older at this point. We're all grown up adults at this point. And so my dad's just fuming at us again and whatever the situation. And the reason why I forget it is because what happened when we got to the restaurant, my brother and I and my dad, we walked through it, say we need a table of 3, and we passed by a person that was in a wheelchair. And my and we said hello and hi, but always that pretending. We've got so much pain that's going on in the background, but as soon as we're in public, we're like good citizens. You'd never know anything was wrong. And came back and said, okay, sat down, we ordered some drinks, and dad's looking in this, and this person is still in the wheelchair outside. And it's been already 15 minutes because this restaurant's not very fast. And it's a little bit colder outside. And so my dad gets up and he goes out there and he finds out that that person's been waiting for its dad's bus for 45 minutes. It hasn't showed up, and the poor person is freezing to death outside. So my dad goes and calls the manager and gets them a hot tea and gets puts his jacket over them and warming them up, and I just start bawling. I just start bawling because that is how my dad cares. That is how I know my dad. That he will make sure he will give the shirt off his back to do anything to help anybody else. So it keeps you sometimes in those layers, and I'm speaking for those people out there that are having this hard time knowing that this is how to the core of their parents or their partner or their siblings are, that they know that they want so much to have that love and that connection with them because they know they're a good person, but their wounds and their shadows and their damage is eating them up alive to do the hurtful things to the people that they love. You have to let them go and figure out that work and that healing, because you're never going to be the lighthouse to their darkness. They have to find that for themselves. And how you get to forgive them is to understand that they are not in their right mind. They are not in a safe place because they've been hurt and they have been damaged. And you got to trust why that person just needs the space to heal. And you can give them that forgiveness, because forgiveness is truly about you not carrying that suitcase or that sea can or that oil tanker worth of hurt and experiences and damages so they don't get hurt. That's where enabling has caused what we have behind Tony's head: grief. That grief is about how much burden you constantly are dragging on because you don't want that other person to know how hard that hurt you. And you're a good person, so you aren't going to let them hear and have that hurt happen. But that person doesn't know its repercussions. It doesn't know its rebound like a boomerang. It's got to hit them back karmically in their space or in their mind or in their head so that they know what that impact was. Because like we all know, we don't touch a hot stove because what? It hurts. It burns. So that is where people have to understand their damages and their pains have to let that go. And so forgiveness isn't about giving some asshole a green check mark because they left you or because they drank or they abused you or they cheated on you or whatever the layers are. You have to understand that's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is about saying, I no longer need to carry this burden. And I understand that, yes, you had all the catchphrases you hear. You did the best you could. You had all you had. It was what it is. And it is so below and so above. You know, those tones, you got to just say, I understand what was at that point and that at that stage. I no longer enable and actively participate in creating some sort of connection, loop, feed into the space that's the void, the black hole, the abyss. And you leave that suitcase at their doormat, not in their house, not throw it in their face. You just ask, is there any space for forgiveness or an apology or a space? No? Then take it for fucking face value. That is my biggest medicine for any of us that are trying to process through that narcissistic, gaslighting, bipolar, personality disorder, whatever layer you want to put these titles on. If somebody ain't ready to let go of that rope, you gotta let it go. Because that person has to figure out what that fall feels like. It might be only 2 inches tall, people. So you are parentified, trying to parentify this inner wounded child of yourself and the inner wounded child of your parents, and you're trying to make everything rainbows and lollipops. That shit don't exist. You gotta let that root get dug and figure out what is the cause, the infection, the problem, the root rot to it. And if not, maybe it's dead and there is nothing left. It's like you being a doctor trying to resuscitate somebody that's gone.
Yeah, I love that. And as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'm so mischievous. I really am, because I'm like, I've been alone in my whole entire life, right? And I'm right there with you. I can forgive you, not for you, but for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also like, hey, sometimes karma needs some help.
Right?
Because I'm like, okay, if I did it, karma's coming back to me very quickly, right? And when
Mm-hmm.
I sit around and I watch people get away with stuff and then karma be taking their time, I kind of have to look at karma and go, hey, I'm gonna start this off really quick. I'm gonna give you a little push in the right direction, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm the guy that would take the rope, and if it's 2 inches off the ground, I will pull you up 40 feet off the ground. And before you get to the edge, I just look at you and go, hey, this is gonna suck. And just let the rope go and let you fall down that
Right.
40 feet.
Well, and it's so interesting you bring that up, Tony, because right now, so that inner child is the kind, naive, innocent one. What you're talking about, Tony, is our rebel teenager energy. You don't think we go through these phases of what you
Oh
hear is,
yeah,
oh, this
most
like
definitely.
inner child? This teenager now wants fucking vengeance. That's where when I find clientele or people on the process, that when they are starting to have those layers, it's where we're starting at that teenager, younger adult stage, knowing like, I know what has happened and I know what you did. And now I'm going to play a little thing called fun into this game.
Yeah. I mean, I told look, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I'm not going to say it's the rebel teenager. I'm just saying I'm giving karma a helping hand. That's all. You
Yeah.
know, I think sometimes karma be having a lot on her plate,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes she just needs some help. Okay, that's all that is. You know.
Yeah. And that's where it's just like those layers that we get into. And that's where we get into the teachings of, that's where we start to play God. Because that's where we're starting to create something in ourselves. And trust me, Tony, I am exactly like you. I've done the exact same things. And that's why you'll get the mistrust or the people tones or whatever. That layer is so crucial, because if you truly believe and have the faith, not fate, faith into what is meant to be shall be, you will have the ability to live such a grateful life, because it will remove you of being the defense blocker or the catapult. So you're no longer the tool for that karmic debt. And that's where a lot of people don't realize, why am I not getting ahead? I thought this should be healed and dealt with. I thought I should be moving and making it to the stars by now. It's because you're still wanting to be the tool for karma. And if you just let go and say, I am at this space and I am here to serve for what is in my highest good, you then remove that restriction and that pathway and that obstacle for karma to get there when it's getting there.
Understood. Definitely
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
You know, okay.
It's hard. I get it. Tony,
I'm gonna let you have that one because I agree. I agreed on all ends. For the simple fact of like there has been times, and I'm speaking from my own experience, right? And when I say that, when I've done things,
Mhm.
karma has showed up, not too long afterwards,
Yeah.
right? Karma was like, remember when you did this? I mean, it didn't waste no time neither. It was like, hey,
Mhm.
you remember when you did this? I'm like, yeah, that was only a couple of days ago. Oh, well, I got something for you. And then there's 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years of just straight hell for me, right?
Mhm.
And then at a time, like I've for me, it's like I had to learn. That's
Yeah.
why I became a lone wolf, because in those times when karma did show up, I've had so many people leave me. I got to a point to where I was just like, okay, you know, and the most shocking one, I had someone that I thought that really cared about me, really cared about me. She and I had been together for maybe a couple of years. Um, I was getting my life together, or trying to anyway, right? And karma showed up. And when karma showed up, it had no mercy. And it had nothing to do with her or anyone else around me, right? It was everything that had to do with me. And
Yeah.
it stripped me. And there was, and no matter what I did, to try to keep things on the up and up, it just peeled me away. It
Yeah.
just peeled me away. And the words that she had spoke to me cut me so deep that after that, I just stopped letting people get close to me. Because what she had said, she goes, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, whatever's happened to you, I want no parts of it. I said, okay, fine. You go ahead. And I went on about my way.
Yeah.
And like I said, for the next 2 years, or maybe I would say the next year, maybe 16 months,
Mm-hmm.
karma manhandled me like nobody's business. And during this time, I watched people, because I had moved around so many times, right? I had nothing. I just got stripped of everything, right? I lost everything. But that was probably about the seventh or eighth time that I've lost everything. So I was getting kind of used to just losing stuff, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I'd pack up a duffel bag, going about my way. People left me, people criticized me, looked down on me, and things like that. But I made my way. And it was crazy, you
Yeah.
know. And I got my butt whipped. I got my butt whipped pretty good. And so when I used to see people that had done things similar to me or had done things worse than me, for the longest time I would not intervene. I just watch them and go, how are they getting away with this?
Right.
What when is if it was me, what I'm saying, karma be right there at my door, talking about, hey Tony, it's time for you and I to come and talk, right? And Carmen would come back and and her and her sister would just beat up on me and stuff like that. I was like, am I the younger sibling? I mean, what in the world is going on? Like this ain't right, you know? And it just swing me around and it was more like it was. Did you ever play the game Mortal Kombat when you was younger?
My husband did, so I watched a little bit of that when we
Yeah,
were
so
together.
imagine having four characters on Mortal Kombat and you're the rookie
Yeah.
from Street Fighter, right? You know what I'm saying? You got some skills, but
Yeah.
there ain't no way you're gonna take on four of these characters from Mortal Kombat, right? That's what it was like.
So what that is, Tony, and this is through my own observation and my own testament, is that because there's something in you. Universe, God, creator, the Ooga Booga, whatever you want to believe in, will sense who's willing to do the work. So when karma is showing up at you, being like another kind of Rocky Bombero moment, being like, okay, kid, we got another lap. We've got another sit ups, push ups, turn ups, roll ups. There's everything it's trying to create you of getting out of that soldier mentality and getting you ready for the victory of a warrior. That's where that's training you. Because your stories, your gifts of this heart and this heartache and this pain, it has something in it. It's called medicine. But it's going to understand if you need a whole vat of it or just a simple sniff of it. It makes you understand what that is. So, what we are going through is crucial because you then have something that the other people, they don't want to waste their time with. And I didn't understand that, just like what you were saying, Tony, for years. How come that asshole or that abuser or that murderer or that person or that cheater, never gets their way? They've got grain up their ass and they've cheated on their wife, or that woman just gets all her bills paid and her husband still sticks around with her. There's all that judgment. But you ain't God. You ain't the jury. You are just a bystander witness of the experience. So it's your turn to understand if you're going to be willing to do better than what that was, because it's all lessons. And what I first started with this whole segment with is we're in a playground. So I know that there is things that my dad is going to have to journey with. I know what my siblings are going to have to journey with, my relatives, my grandparents. All of that has to happen because I'm journeying with something, but it's up to you to understand and navigate how that's going to be. So for those that have had, so we talked about the grief of people that are in between the worlds of manipulation or programmings or things like that. The grief I want to talk about is for those that have parents or siblings or loved ones that said, I don't want anything more to do with you and I abandon you. I release and relinquish any thought, memory, process, or pain of that with you. That grief that you're processing with at that time, you are struggling to understanding, why was I not enough? Why was I not something that that person wanted to stick around with? What I'd like you to open your lens and see and give you the light of is that you were worth something. They didn't feel that they were going to be worthy with you. And they didn't know how to steward or to contain or to compete or to teach you on how you needed to figure out and do something bigger and better with your life.
I totally agree. And as we begin to wrap this up, I have to jump on another call. But
Okay.
I want to have you. I want to definitely have you back on, and everything. And trust me, guys, you guys are going to see a lot more of her. We got some amazing work that we're going to be doing, and I think you hit everything on the head when you were saying that. And like, I love just speaking with you. I do. I love just speaking with you and everything else. So now, before I let you go, tell people how they can find you.
Yeah, so if you want to dive in more with us, it is at thenicheniation.com. We have our Guidance Plus membership that we are working with you, and we give all these types of talks and courses and information on there. It's $44.44 a month. If you want free things, we have a group that we're signing up for the next layer, and then we're good to rock and rumble. So thank you all, and to check us out at the Niche Nation on Facebook, and we are online. So thank you again, Tony, for having me a part of your show today.
Of course. And I do have her information down below. Now, before I let you off, you don't get off that easy. If you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
You are the only one that will validate your life. So stop seeking it in everybody else and just do what the fuck you want to do, because it's for you this time.
Hey, Lincoln, go to the description down in the YouTube. I do have everything down there, so you can just go there and check her out. Let her know that Tony sent you and everything. And again, I want to say, amazing story, amazing person, putting everything into perspective out here, giving the hell, just giving the world hell. You know what I'm saying? And just turning everything around. I can't wait to the work that we do moving forward and things like that. For everyone else, thank you guys for tuning in. This is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And if this is your first time, do me a favor. If you're on anything except for YouTube, head on over to that YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. You guys go out there and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again for joining me. And I'm gonna message you a little bit later and see what else that we can come up with. Okay. Of course, I got questions. I'm gonna pick your head. I got questions. I told you I got questions and everything.
100%.
And for everyone else, thank you guys. Enjoy your day. See you guys in the next episode. Peace.
Thank you.